One of the things I love is the use of wood beams in design, but it would be too expensive and difficult to install wood beams in this condo. So we're going to create faux wood beams instead. I purchased wood from Lowe's. I used 1x6s and 1x4s. I started by staining the wood to the color that I felt would work in my space. Be sure to stain the front and also the sides. You can choose to distress your wood prior to this step if that's the look you like. Once everything was stained and dry, I needed to measure the height that I needed for the wood. I set some LVP flooring pieces in place because that's the kind of flooring we're going to use here, and I wanted to make sure that I cut the height of the wood to what I needed once the flooring was there. Once the wood was cut to the proper length, I started by attaching the 6-inch wide piece along the inside frame of the doorway. The next step was to attach the 1x4 board, making sure that it overlapped the 6-inch board and made for a really nice corner. I repeated this on the other side, and then I was ready to work on the center area. I didn't want to measure and cut this piece until the sides were in place so that I would have an accurate measurement. Once that was in place, again using the nail gun, the last step was to place the final piece along the top border. I made sure to cut that piece to meet the outer edges of the side pieces, so that way everything lines up and looks seamless. I love the way this easy project upgraded this hallway. It looks like there are wood beams here, while really it was just under $100 in materials and just a few hours of work. I wanted to bring a bit of floral springtime to my doorway, and here's how I did it in under an hour and for less than $10. I took these floral decals and placed them along the side of the door frame. I cut the decal at the point where the decal touched the frame and repositioned it onto the frame itself. This way, when looking at the doorway straight on, the flower would still look like it was completely intact and simply growing over the door frame. I cut it with a razor blade, and when I repositioned it, I made sure to press it into the grooves of my decorative frame. I continued up along the door frame, making sure to wrap the flowers over the right top corner so that it looked like the flowers wrapped around the doorway. They clung easily to the wall, even though my wall is very highly textured, and they clung to the frame itself as well. I added a bit more of the flowers along that right corner to make sure it looked nice and filled out. I also overlapped some of the decals so that it looked a little more three-dimensional, as flowers would typically overlap each other when you're looking at a flower bush straight on. After that, I added a few leaf decals sparingly. The great thing about this project is that the decals could be removed easily, making it simple to reposition them as needed, and also making it ideal as a temporary project, whether that means that I only want them here for the season, or if someone lives in a rental and wants to be able to add decor temporarily, but retain the ability to remove them when they move. I hope this inspires you to test out and layer some floral decals of your own and bring nature into your room.
Our back door that we installed a doggy door was kind of boring, but I knew there was an inexpensive way to make it look a lot better without having to get a new door. First thing I did was I got some sawhorses and put some 2x4s across. This will give some strength to the plywood I got to put down. Next, some really inexpensive 1/4 inch Lowe plywood. As you can see, it's actually really lightweight and it's only a 1/4 inch thick. It's got some beautiful grain to it if you ever want to do some staining. But the first step is to go ahead and mark what we're going to do on the top and bottom of the door. I'm going to go with 6 inches on it, but we need to make sure we put some tape down because this type of plywood will splinter. So we're going to mark 6 inches across the bottom and we're going to go ahead and cut it up. I went ahead and used my saw, just went straight across, and again, you got to make sure you put some tape down. And here's the good reason why. Look at how sharp those edges are. No splinters or sanding required. Then I trimmed it to the width of the door, and it's time to put some glue on. A lot of people think that you can just use nails, but you can't. Put some good wood glue down, and it will hold and secure all along without any bubbles. Next, I took a foam brush and I went ahead and just spread the glue. Now, what you need to do is get it all over, especially around the edges. That's going to make it hold flat. Once you get that, just go ahead and put it up next to the door, and we're going to go ahead and use some really small 1-inch brad nails to hold it in place. Now, the glue makes it a little slippery, so put one nail in one corner, line it up with the door, and go ahead and nail it in. Now, we're not going to overload this board with too many nails. We've got to make sure we do just the right amount. That glue is going to set up in about half an hour. Next, we had to go on the bottom, but we had to go around the doggy door. Wanted to make sure that we got it all covered. So put some glue on, snap it into place, and it doesn't take that many nails, and we're just going to use that brad nailer and put it right on there. Next, we got to take the doorknobs off because we've got to put our trim around the sides. Now, 6 inches along the top, that was the width, but on the sides, we're going to go a little bit smaller with 4-inch. Put the glue on the board and again, nail it up and down. Not too many nails, just enough to hold it in place. Now it's time to cut out where the doorknobs were. Again, we've got to use tape. Take a drill bit on the back of the door. Go ahead and outline where your doorknob's going to go. Now, I just went ahead and used my jigsaw and cut out a hole. It's going to come right out, and if you need to go ahead and sand it to make it a little bit smooth, go right ahead. Next, it was time for the last piece. Put some glue on it, and this one we're going to put right in the middle between the doorknobs. Make sure we measure it as straight and perfect. Put some nails in. Now we got to cover up the seams and the nail holes. I went ahead and used some DAP, plastic wood. It goes on pink, but when it dries, it comes the color of the wood. Go ahead on the seams, use a spackle knife to put it in place. But when it comes to the nail holes, all you have to do is just go ahead and put it inside. It dries pretty quick, and just rub it off and get it nice and smooth. Once it dries, go ahead and just sand it down, make it look really good. Do that with all of the plastic wood that you put on and get it nice. And next, it's time for paint. I went ahead and used a primer and paint in one. I wanted to get some good coverage. You're going to paint the whole door. We're not going to go with a dual color on this one. We're just going to go with one. So you're just going to paint everything. I used a little foam brush, about 4 inches wide. It rolls on nice and smooth. I didn't want to use brush because I didn't want any strokes, but here we go. Let's put those doorknobs back on. And do you remember that old door that we had? Look at that. Now, with the trim, how beautiful is that? I only spent about $12 transforming this door. Didn't have to go out and spend $100 to make it look good. I hope you enjoyed this project. We sure did.
If you've ever wondered what the inside of a hollow core door looks like, you're about to find out. This door was in fine shape, but when it opened, it took up all the space in the hallway, and I wanted to convert this closet to a laundry closet with a stackable washer and dryer, and having doors that open like French doors was going to be much more functional. I removed the door from the hinges and removed all of the door lock hardware. I laid it on the table to get started with my project. The next step was to go ahead and cut the door with the table saw. There was no turning back now. And then I got my first glimpse inside a hollow core door. It was hollow, with wood at the top and bottom and some cardboard in some areas. I sanded down the rough edges left from the table saw and then measured and cut my 1x2s to the height of the door. In order to add 1x2s to the end of the door, I needed something for it to attach to. So I took the wood left over from cutting down my 1x2s to the right height, and I attached these to the inside of the door using a pin nailer, since this uses just a very small nail. Once that was done, I used construction adhesive and some more nails to attach the 1x2s along the edge. Now I've got 2 door halves set up and ready. The problem is, clearly, that I also have big holes in the door due to the old lock and handle. So I had to cover those. I happened to have some leftover beadboard from a recent bathroom project, and so I decided to just turn this over and use the smooth side. You could use a panel or sheet cut down like this, or alternatively, you could use a piece of trim that you like. I cut this to 3.5 inches wide to cover the doorknob hole, and cut it thinner on the other side to cover up the seam where the 1x2 was attached to the door. I secured those in place using construction adhesive and the pin nailer. Once those were in place, I could hang the door and get a good look at everything. The next step was to paint. I added a few coats to make it look uniform, and I did caulk between the trim pieces and the door itself. Finally, I added some long handles and my door was ready for use. It stays together and tight when closed, but if yours doesn't, you can add a door magnet at the top. I had bought some of these on Amazon, but didn't end up needing them at all on my project. Now my closet is ready for me to add the laundry center, and the doors will allow me to open the closet without the door obstructing the entire hallway. This project could also be used on a pantry door or linen closet door really nicely. I hope this inspired you to repurpose your door to fit your needs.
I'd like to be able to open my back door without letting the bugs in, but what I need to do is measure the door, come up with 33 inches, and go pick up some window screen from my hardware store. First thing I gotta do, open up the packaging, and then I'm gonna lay it out. It's 80 inches long, and as it's 36 inches, I wanna cut it right down the middle. So I'm gonna cut it at the 18-inch mark. First thing I want to do also is lay out a straight board that I can cut across. I'm going to use a razor blade. You can use a pair of scissors. I'm using a razor blade on this one, and I know what you're thinking. He's cutting right through the table. But don't worry, this is one of my work tables. I can just go ahead and slice right through it. Once I get that screen cut, I'm going to separate them. Then I'm going to grab some Velcro. This is a 24-inch strip, and what I'm going to do is lay it out because it comes separated. I'm going to put the two halves together. This kind of Velcro is sticky on both sides with paper that keeps it in. So once I get it all laid out, then I gotta measure it. I think I need about good 8 strips, so I'm gonna cut these at 3 inches a piece. Go ahead and go down and mark it at the 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18, 21 inch mark. That's gonna give me 8 good strips. I'm going to go ahead and cut those by keeping them together. I want each one of these to match up with each other. Once I get them cut, the next thing I got to do is go ahead and place them along the screen on one half where I want to lay them out. It's going to be about every foot or so, maybe a little bit less. The first thing also after that is to peel the backing off one side of the Velcro, and I'm going to place it right next to the edge on one side of the screens, about a couple inches down from the top and the bottom. I'm going to place all 8 strips along the screen. Once I get that done, I'm going to go ahead and peel the backing off of the strips. Take the other screen that I have and fold it in half. It's easier to work when it's halfway folded. Then I'm going to place it right where it needs to go. Press down hard. I want this to adhere to the sticky part of the Velcro. Once I get that first half done, I'm going to go ahead and lay it down and get it all secured on the other side. Again, just some good pressure. Gives me some good overlap and it's sticking together really nice. Next step is I got to secure it to the door. So what I'm going to use is some pins, and they've got a nice head on there and it's going to give it some security. So I'm going to put those into the door trim on the outside. Don't need to put too many, but just enough to make sure it stays secure. Now, I do have some overlap on the sides. You could fold those over to give it some extra strength, but I think it's going to hold up just great. Now look at this. I've got this screen on. I can, if I need to, open my door, open the screens. It's not hard to go out of. And in the afternoon or early morning, I can open it up, keep the bugs out, and let the nice cool air in. Doesn't take much to put it together. And also, if I need to, I can open it up with some Velcro or some twine and hold it together. I hope you enjoyed this DIY screen door project as much as I did.
Today I'm taking this plain and worn looking old pantry door and making it over into a beautiful barn door. First, I picked up my materials at the hardware store. I grabbed some 2x2s and some 1x4s. First, I removed the hinge pins from the door and moved the door into my workspace. I got rid of the old door hinges and doorknob as well. Then I filled in all of those gaps with sandable wood filler. For the large hole left by the doorknob, I used a little trick where I stuffed a bit of paper towel into the hole, then covered that with putty. I have the caulking tube through the door handle opening just as a support until the putty dries. Using the paper towel helps take up space and save on the amount of putty you'll use. The wood filler will take around half an hour to dry, so I'll start working on the rest of my door. Since the barn door is mounted higher than a normal hinged door, I need to add length to my interior door. Fortunately, 2x2 wood pieces happen to be the same thickness as a door. I measured and cut my 2x2s and affixed them to the top and bottom of the door. Now that the top and bottom pieces are attached, my door looks like this. Time for me to start working on the decorative part of the door. Using the 1x4s, I measured the length of the door and made my cuts. By the way, I made straight cuts which were quick and easy, but if you want to get more fancy, you can miter cut your corners or add a different decorative layout of the wood on your door. I attached the wood to the door using liquid nails, being careful to move the wood into place from the outside so that I didn't get the liquid adhesive onto the surface of the door that would be visible. I love how the 1x4 covers up that old door handle space. It makes it so easy. For the horizontal pieces, I again measured and cut. Take time to make sure everything is spaced perfectly. I must admit, I saved money on this step by actually using wood from an old pallet for my 3 centerpieces. It's a little less thick than the 1x4, but you don't even notice it since the exterior frame is all made of the same wood and it's just those 3 inside pieces that are slightly different. Once everything was in place, I used a nail gun to secure it all. Caulking the places where the wood abuts the other pieces at the corners helps the door look seamless, and caulking it along the inside will help give it a great finished look when you're done. I like to apply a line of caulking and then gently run over it with my finger to smooth it into place. I gave that about half hour to dry. During that time, I started working on setting up my barn door track hardware. Painting was next. As you can see, I used white because that's what I had already and it was nice and neutral for my space. But the door would look amazing in another color as well. I saw a door that had this same design but it was painted blue and it was gorgeous. Once I finished my first coat of paint, I noticed that I needed to fill in these nail holes with more caulking. That was due to me using the pallet wood. No big deal, I just filled those in and waited for them to dry. I applied a total of 3 coats of paint to get it the way I liked it. Standing the door up made it easier to work on the sides at this point. The putty was now dry and I used sandpaper to smooth it and also to smooth the edges of the 2x2s at the top and bottom of the door. I used my caulking gun again, this time to fill in the gap between the original door and the decorative pieces that were added. Once that was dry, I painted those and was really happy with how seamless it looked. I attached the barn door hardware and hung my repurposed door. I love the way this barn door looks, and since I only had to purchase the wood and a little bit of sandable wood filler at the end, it only cost me $42 plus the hardware. If I'd had to purchase all of the materials down to the sandpaper, it would have cost around $86 plus the hardware. I purchased the hardware from Amazon and it was $50 total, including the handle. I hope this inspired you to repurpose your old interior door and make it a beautiful feature in your home. Thanks for watching Home Talk and see you next time.